We've seen, again, we hope to hear more details about what may have been the motive tonight. But everything at this point it seems to be focused on mental health issues, and it looks like authorities now are heading toward the news conference area. So let's just listen in as they begin this news conference that we've been waiting for.
I thought it's important to recap the events of the day, and then I'll turn the conference over to the airport director, Mark Gale, and then we'll conclude with the FBI SAC, George Piro, and then the three of us will take any questions. The day began around 12:55 p.m. when an American subject by the name of Esteban Santiago landed in the Fort Lauderdale Airport Terminal 2 on a flight from Minnesota, Delta flight from Minnesota to Fort Lauderdale. He eventually retrieved a firearm and began indiscriminately shooting. This cowardly, heinous act resulted in the deaths of 5 people. There were 8 more people injured by way of gunshot that were transported to local hospitals. There were at least 30 to 40 more people who went to the hospitals for various injuries, falling, contusions, broken bones, strains, sprains, and things of that nature. The subject was immediately taken into custody by Broward Sheriff's deputies without incident. The subject was interviewed extensively by a team of FBI agents and Broward Sheriff's deputies. The subject is now in federal custody, and SAC Piro will be speaking about that in a few moments. The subject, at this point, as I said, is an American citizen, and the investigation continues. We've bussed maybe thousands of people from off of airplanes, from baggage, waiting in lines, to the port. They're at Terminal 4 at the port. The Red Cross and many, many other agencies are coming together to assist these people. As tragic as this incident is and continues to be, I've never been so proud of local, state, and federal law enforcement. The FBI, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Broward Sheriff's Office, and many local public safety agencies came together and worked with complete cohesion. The entire law enforcement and public safety community worked tirelessly today and continues to work tirelessly as we continue this investigation. At this time, I'll bring up Mark Gale.
Thank you, Sheriff. Again, Mark Gale, Airport Director. First, I'd like to say again, on behalf of Broward County administration, our mayor, county sympathies, keep our thoughts and prayers with those that lost their lives here today, as well as their family and friends. Truly a horrific incident. As the sheriff has said, we had a number of individuals that were not only stuck on airplanes, planes that had landed, but as well as some that were on the gates that were not permitted to leave right after this incident occurred. We had a number of individuals that evacuated out of the terminal onto the apron areas. We've been working most of the day to make sure that everybody was obviously safe and secure. Once we received that word from our law enforcement partners, we've been in the process of either transporting those individuals over to Port Everglades, to Terminal 4. We've had dozens and dozens of buses transporting what we anticipate or expect to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10,000 folks over to Port Everglades. Broward County staff, as well as the Red Cross, are over there to assist those passengers in either getting them to destinations, assisting with hotel accommodations, providing them food and shelter. Through this evening, we're going to continue to work with our law enforcement partners here as we continue to try to get the airport back into an operational status, working with all our airlines, the Transportation Security Administration, and others to try to get the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport back in operation tomorrow morning. The goal will be to have us operational at 5 a.m. Tomorrow morning, but we're going to be encouraging all our travelers to check with their individual airlines, as some may not be operating right away. Clearly, this incident has caused a lot of disruption not only in their individual schedules but other schedules around the country. So we encourage everybody to actually contact their airlines. We will continue to provide information through social media, through Twitter, at FLL Flyer, through our webpage, and we encourage people to keep checking those sources for any changes. And that's all I have for the time being.
Sheriff, turn it over to George. Good evening. As the sheriff mentioned, the FBI is working very, very closely with the Broward Sheriff's Office in this investigation. We have begun the difficult task of processing the crime scene, which will allow us to identify the deceased and making the proper notification to the family members. As you can imagine, with this type of investigation and this type of incident, it is a long-term, very difficult, complex investigation that requires us to pursue all leads and avenues. We are conducting the investigation not only here in South Florida, but in several other states as we try to pursue the suspect's activities leading up to today's horrific incident. The subject is in federal custody. As the sheriff mentioned, a long interview was conducted of the individual by the FBI and Broward Sheriff's Office, and he will be charged federally and most likely will have his initial appearance in Broward on Monday. Again, as I mentioned, with these types of incidents, as horrific they are, we are looking at all avenues. We have not ruled out terrorism, and we will be pursuing every angle to try to determine the motive behind this attack and any associates, any connections, communication, everything that you can imagine. I assure you we are pursuing every possible lead. Thank you.
Was this originally a flight from Anchorage and then to Minneapolis and then to here?
Yes. The individual flew from Alaska to Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale on a Delta Airlines flight.
Was he here?
At this time, it's still too early in the investigation for us to truly know why he came to Florida. So those are some of the things that we're looking at as his travel patterns, what brought him here, and his connections to South Florida.
We understand that the suspect had contact with an FBI officer in Alaska. Were those agents aware that he had weapons? Was anything done to take those away from him?
Yes. The individual did walk into our Anchorage office in November. He came in and spoke with FBI agents. At that time, he clearly stated that he did not intend to harm anyone. However, his erratic behavior concerned FBI agents that were interviewing him, and they contacted local police and turned him over to the local police. He was taken into custody by the local police and transported to a medical facility for a mental health evaluation. We looked at his contacts, we did our interagency checks and everything, and at that point we closed our assessment.
Was there anything done to take away firearms? Did you guys know that he had firearms on him?
That answer, or that question, I really don't have the answers for. Again, it's very early in the investigation. We are working very closely with our Anchorage field office trying to determine his activities there, but I can't really tell you about his weapons there.
He voluntarily walked into the FBI office in Anchorage?
Yes, he voluntarily walked into our office, and he was interviewed by agents out of that office.
And how long was he in the mental health facility in Anchorage?
That information I don't have. Again, it's very early in the investigation, and that's something that we'll have to try to determine with our Anchorage field office. He was turned over to local custody, and it was the local custody that took him to the medical hospital for evaluation.
Is the FBI investigating a home in Anchorage? Are you guys looking into a house he may have lived at in Anchorage right now?
We're actually looking at several investigative leads, not only in Alaska, but in other states that we have determined that he's either traveled to or has connections there.
Was there a plane aboard one of the flights? Was there a plane aboard one of the flights that he took, or a baggage plane that may have set him off?
I'm not aware of any type of incident like that, but again, it is very early in the investigation. But at this point, we're unaware of an incident either on the flight or at baggage claim.
Is there any indication that he had become radicalized in any way? We know he mentioned some kind of hearing voices in his head or something like that.
Again, it's very early in the investigation. As I mentioned, we're not ruling out anything. We're looking at every angle, including the terrorism angle. But it's going to take us some time to determine the true nature of the motivation of the individual. I believe he is 26 years old. He was in the U.S. military. We are currently reviewing his military records. I can tell you that he was in the military. I believe it was in the Army, but we haven't confirmed exactly his service.
What type of gun and how many shots fired?
What I can tell you at this point is that it was a semi-auto handgun, but I'm not prepared to release the type of handgun, and it's way too early in the investigation to tell you how many rounds were fired.
Did he try to take hostages in the shooting?
No, he didn't try and take any hostages. As the subject, Esteban Santiago, was shooting, he was, as I said, seconds after the shootings, contacted by a Broward Sheriff's deputy. Instructions were rendered. He was taken into custody without incident and was immediately interviewed by the FBI and the Broward Sheriff's Office. One more question.
Sheriff, did he make any statements while he was shooting?
Not to my knowledge. Vita Coleman-Wright will be getting in touch and letting you know when the next press release will be, press conference will be, when we're ready to release more information. Right now, I just ask that the prayers of a nation be with the people and the families that lost loved ones in Broward County. Thank you.
Is this the last press conference?
Press conference just wrapping up, as you can see there at the airport in Fort Lauderdale, the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport. After that horrific shooting today. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. We're going to get to our panel in just a moment. Renee Marsh, our aviation correspondent, is with us. Deb Farrick in Union City, New Jersey, the home of the suspect's aunt. CNN's Boris Sanchez is live for us at the Fort Lauderdale Airport. But you can see officials there from the FBI director in charge of that particular area, also the airport director and the Broward County Sheriff, all speaking out about this 26-year-old named Esteban Santiago, saying he was a member of the military. They're going over his military records at the moment, trying to figure out why he took a flight from Alaska to Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale, a Delta flight, and then in the baggage area, taking a gun out, as they described, a semi-automatic handgun. They wouldn't be specific about it, and then shooting people, killing 5 people, injuring at least 8, and then, of course, tying up air traffic throughout the country today because of this incident. Again, they said that they are now going over forensics, as it's is customary in this case, and more information at FLL Flyer. FLL Flyer. They said they're going to release that information through social media, and they said they will have another press conference, but not exactly sure what time. The latest information coming out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In the meantime, as I said, our Boris Sanchez following the story for us all evening, all day since it broke today. Boris, the suspect in custody now. What else are we learning tonight?
Yeah, Dom, I think the most interesting thing that you just heard was the FBI spokesperson confirming that this suspect went to an FBI office in Anchorage, Alaska in November and talked to the officers reportedly about voices in his head. He felt that he was under the control of a government agency and they were telling him the voices to join ISIS. I asked the spokesperson if any agents were aware of perhaps he had weapons on them, because we were able to confirm that in the recent past the suspect had purchased 2 Glocks, one a Glock 9, one a Glock 40. The response was that they simply don't have an answer at the time, whether or not those agents were aware that he had firearms or whether or not they tried to perhaps confiscate them. The spokesperson confirmed that he was referred to local law enforcement. He did say that at the time the suspect said that he had no intention of hurting anyone. So some really interesting insight into this person's mind. Clearly he felt that something was out of line, and we saw the result of it today. Meantime, here at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, Dom, I want you to see this huge line. There are hundreds of people still in line waiting to leave Terminal 2, just outside Terminal 2, I should say, at the airport. These folks have been here all day long since the shooting took place. We've seen a steady stream of buses coming down, picking them up and evacuating them, taking them to Port Everglades, where we've learned that the Red Cross and other agencies are offering help. Port Everglades, of course, just a short distance from here. But I've spoken to several people here who are frustrated. Some of them have actually been sitting on the tarmac since the shooting took place. We spoke to one woman who told us that her plane was scheduled to take off shortly after the shooting, and she was forced to sit in the plane up until about 9 p.m. on the tarmac. So there's a lot of stressed people out here, obviously, not to mention those that had loved ones that were affected by the shooting and those that are still recovering right now. Again, at least 5 people killed, 8 more in the hospital right now recovering, Don. This is a day that will certainly change the outlook of this community and possibly even change the way people feel going to the airport. I spoke to one woman who was in the terminal when the shooting took place with her family. She told me that it was chaos, that at one point she dropped to the ground and was overcome with emotion because she was separated from her family and wasn't sure if they were okay. When she was finally reunited with them, she was relieved, but she says that, you know, this was really something that changed her thinking when going to the airport. She was very, very concerned. The other interesting thing that she said, you know, we asked her, did you ever think this could happen coming here to Fort Lauderdale for vacation? She said this could happen anywhere, Don.
Those outside areas, those soft targets, as they call it. The interesting thing, we see that long line behind you, and we see lots of police activity, Boris. They're not going to reopen this airport till 5 a.m., so it's going to be chaotic for a while, and once it opens at 5 a.m., I don't think it's going to be business as usual. The other thing that they mentioned tonight is that they're not ruling out the possibility of terrorism. We'll discuss that with our other members of the panel here. So, Boris, I want you to stand by. I want to bring in Renee Marsh. Renee, sources say the suspect had a gun in his check bag, which we are told he declared. What are the guidelines for traveling with a firearm?
Well, Don, by all accounts, the shooter followed all of the procedures for carrying a gun in checked luggage, which, by the way, is legal. The airport police in Anchorage, Alaska, that's where he originated, said that the suspect declared the gun before the flight and had it in that proper casing. It was properly stored in his checked luggage. We should point out, TSA has very strict guidelines for this. The firearm must be unloaded. It has to be stored in a hard side case, and the case has to be locked. Only the passenger is allowed to have a key or a combination to that case. And again, it must be declared at the ticket counter. So all the information that we have received is that this shooter did all of that. He followed all of the rules, but Don, it appears that he took advantage of the vulnerability that we have at basically every airport across the country. You just said it, those soft targets, all of those areas before the security checkpoint.
It's interesting because I've had to follow this procedure while working on a story with a gun, Renee, but I had to take the gun to a special area and then pick it up. Did that not happen in this case?
That part is unclear. We haven't heard, you know, did he have to show ID before he retrieved his luggage with the actual gun inside? That part is unclear. We do know that he retrieved his checked luggage. He retreated to the bathroom, which was only just steps away, pulled it out, and then opened fire. But let's just say, Don, let's just say they did take his ID. One would argue that nothing really could stop him, even if he went through that checks and balance, from going into that bathroom and pulling out the gun just minutes later and doing what he did today.
So let's go over, Renee, some of the things that they said in the press conference. And I mentioned as I was introducing you and finishing up with Boris that they said that they're not ruling out the possibility of terrorism. That was this, by the special agent in charge there, George Piro. What do you know about that?
At this point, we know that that law enforcement doesn't have him on their radar as far as being radicalized. You know, they had that incident, they had that encounter with him in which he showed up at that FBI office in Anchorage, Alaska. They did check out his background. They saw he had a military background, and so they referred him to a local hospital under the guidance of local police. But it ended there. You know, at this point, we don't have any indication that he was on their radar for anything more than that. They were aware that he had some mental issues. His name was not on the no-fly list. So at this point, we don't have any indication to believe that it was terrorism, even though there's that comment that he said that voices in his head told him to follow ISIS. I think what investigators are looking at now and really zeroing in on is that this was possibly a mental case.
Okay. Renee, also, what about, they're also talking about a fight or some sort of incident on the plane. What do you know about that?
So we've been hearing these reports about this alleged fight or altercation on board the aircraft. Investigators have been looking into that to see if possibly that is what angered him enough to go and get his firearm. However, they haven't found any solid evidence to back that all up. So right now, that just remains a rumor that there was an altercation that may have sparked this, Don.
Do we know, wouldn't the plane have been greeted differently? Would something would have been different?
Exactly.
If there was an altercation?
Exactly. If there was something that was big enough that occurred on board this aircraft that really concerned the flight crew, then they would have called for law enforcement to meet them at the gate. That's customary. That's what you usually see when it rises to the level that really concerns the flight crew. We didn't see that. And so let's just say maybe if he was having a small argument with someone on board, which we have no indication that that was the case, but if there was something, it clearly did not rise to the level that concerned the flight crew to the point that they would call for law enforcement to meet that aircraft at the gate, because that did not happen.
Stand by. We don't still have Boris, do we? Do we still have Boris there? Boris, just stand by, Renee. Boris, do we still have people on airplanes? I know you said that there are people in lines. As I said, it's not reopening until 5 a.m. in the morning. Are there still people on planes there?
Fortunately not. From what we understand, they were able to leave the planes around 9 o'clock this evening. It's still staggering when you consider that they were essentially sitting on a plane on the tarmac for 7 to 8 hours. They were not allowed to move as they were watching people running through the runway, screaming and running for their lives, as we saw hundreds of people do that this afternoon, Dom.
All right, Boris, stand by. Renee Marsh, stand by. I want to get to Deborah Farrick now. Deborah is in New Jersey, and that's where the FBI is interviewing the aunt of the alleged gunman. What are you hearing?
Well, Don, what we're hearing is that earlier this afternoon, the FBI agents were here. We counted about 8 of them. We saw some police as well. They were inside the home, and this is part of the routine. They've got to go forward, basically, and see who they can talk to, what kind of information they can get. But the home behind me here, a number of reporters were able to go inside and speak to the aunt, and the aunt actually said that her nephew had a baby, that he's the youngest of 5 siblings. They live both in Puerto Rico and also in Florida, which may explain why he was on his way to Florida. She said that he served in Iraq from April 2010 to February 2011. That was in Iraq. He was deployed. When he returned, she said that he was really acting strangely, and he was discharged in August of this past year. And a couple of months later, that's when he walked into the FBI agent saying that somebody from the U.S. intelligence agency was speaking to him. He was sort of hearing these voices, and that's when he was questioned and taken to a medical facility for that mental evaluation. But the aunt said she had no idea why this happened. She said she's very sorry, she's very sad, and she asked God to be merciful. So this is really impacting the family as well. But you've got FBI agents who are looking at places where he is known to have served. Those may include Missouri, Puerto Rico, Fort Dix, New Jersey. They're trying to put this together. And one of the reasons, Don, as you asked Renee, is why haven't they ruled out terrorism? And that's because, look, this absolutely may be a person who had mental difficulties, mental problems, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't contacted by somebody. And they've really got to rule that out to make sure that that wasn't some sort of a trigger that sort of led to this spiral.
All right, Deb, I want you to stand by. Renee, stand by. Boris Sanchez as well. Our CNN is on top of this breaking news story. A press conference being held in Florida just moments ago by officials there to explain what happened as much as they know after 5 5 people are dead, 8 others injured after a gunman started shooting in a baggage area at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. I want to bring in now Broward County Mayor Barbara Sharif. She joins me now by phone. Mayor, thank you for joining us. I know it's a very busy time for you. I'm sorry that this happened. Wish we could have spoken at a better time. You have been talking to investigators. What can you tell us about this suspect?
So at this point in time, I don't have a lot of details about the suspect other than what I've just heard you speak about on air. The FBI has stated that it is Esteban Santiago, and he did fly in from Alaska to Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale on a Delta flight. At this time, our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims and the victims themselves, and hopefully the individuals that we have taken to the area hospitals will pull through. The airport status is going to remain closed at this point in time and for the remainder of the evening, and is expected to open up at some point tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're told at 5 a.m., but you know that could change depending on where they are in the investigation. Mayor, you did mention the people that your thoughts and prayers were with the injured. Do you have any updates on how the injured are doing tonight?
At this point in time, they have not released any further information about the injured, and so I cannot give you an update on that.
Your team oversees airport operations at Fort Lauderdale. Any indication at this point that there were some warnings that were missed about this?
No, not at this point in time. As a matter of fact, our law enforcement personnel, our airport personnel, and security acted exactly as they were supposed to according to their active shooter training, and all evacuation in the airport went just as we planned it to be. We did have a few people, however, who were panicking and did run out on the tarmac, and those individuals were kept safe, and we bused them over to our Terminal 4 in our Port Everglades.
Yeah, I can imagine if someone is shooting, people would run anywhere they could, and you see people, these are secured areas, and on busy tarmacs
Correct.
as well, which can be very dangerous at the time, but I mean, if someone is shooting, you know, what the heck are you going to do? Mayor, do you know anything about the incident aboard the plane? Do you know if the plane was met by anyone? Was there any sort of altercation on that flight from Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale?
There were reports that there was some form of altercation with this gentleman on the flight, and that it was de-escalated and there was no need for any further action. There was not any alerts as far as meeting the aircraft, as far as detaining him. He was free to go, and he did go into the baggage claim area, and that's when this all occurred.
Do you know if he has any connection, what his connection is to South Florida?
I'm not aware of his connection to South Florida. I was just confirmed that he was actually an American resident, because earlier today someone had reported that he was of Canadian descent. So we were just trying to make sure that we had all the information correct prior to the press conference and the release, and I'm glad that the FBI has confirmed. It
is unfortunate, Mayor, that this happened at your airport. Do you think airports in Florida and around the country need to rethink how they approach security, specifically in the baggage claim area or those soft target areas?
I'm not necessarily sure that it's just about security, because as soon as this shooting occurred, our BSO and all of our airport security was right there, and they were right on top of it. I know that some people have said that it seemed like it took a long time, but when you are in an active shooter situation, seconds can seem like minutes, and minutes can seem like an hour.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mayor Barbara Sharif of the Broward County, Florida. We appreciate it. We're going to continue to follow this breaking news coming out of Florida. As you can see, there are still people there stranded in some sense. They're standing there on the line, long lines. The airport closed now, won't open until 5 a.m. tomorrow if they can continue the investigation and get most of it out of the way. The suspect, who is Esteban Santiago, 26 years old, former member of the military, reportedly went to the FBI just months ago saying he heard voices telling him to watch ISIS videos. That was in Alaska. So why was he allowed to travel with a weapon? We'll discuss.